Hey everybody, welcome to episode 64 of the Go Get Outside podcast. This is your host, Jason Milligan. Welcome back. Welcome aboard. On today's show, we will be speaking with Kevin Heiden, a self-proclaimed aspiring canyoneer, which is a fairly inaccurate assessment, seeing as he has been doing canyons for a couple of years now and has gained a fair amount of experience, having done numerous canyons within those 2 years. Oftentimes on this show, we speak to people who have been doing particular activities for long periods of time or their entire lifetime. And it's always nice to come across a person who is relatively new to something and still extremely excited and can share that passion and excitement with everyone listening. And that is one of the reasons I wanted to have Kevin on the show. As you'll hear, he is one of those people whose life has completely turned around ever since he discovered canyoneering specifically. Over the last couple of years, he has completely thrown himself into this activity, and you'll hear all about why he has done that and why it has improved his life. So before we head over to Stoney Point and talk to Kevin, I'll just forewarn you that this is another one of those episodes that was recorded while I was getting sick this winter, so please excuse my particularly nasty, phlegmy voice in this episode. So with that in mind, let's travel over to the broken glass and graffiti-infested Stoney Point on a December day and speak to Kevin Heiden.
My name is Kevin Heiden. I am a local to the area that we are actually hanging out today, Stoney Point in Chatsworth. I am an aspiring canyoneer.
Aspiring?
Aspiring, yes. I still feel like I'm aspiring because I have a lot more to do. I feel like I just took baby steps so far.
So you are a quote-unquote aspiring canyoneer. For anybody that's listened to this show prior, they probably know what canyoneering is. But just on the off chance they don't know, really quickly, canyoneering is descending canyons, sometimes with technical means. Those are the interesting ones that can include down climbing, rappelling.
Fun canyons.
So we covered that. You were referring to yourself as an aspiring canyoneer, so give me some quick stats. When did you first take your classes? And I know you know, how many canyons have you done at this point?
I do know how many canyons I've done at this point.
Do you have a list?
I have my list in my bag right there.
We're going to have you pull it out and read them later.
Yeah, it got to the point where I had to make a list. So the first actual introduction to canyoneering I ever got was an intro to rappelling class, actually. It wasn't canyoneering, it was just how to rappel. And I took it in the end of 2015. It was like one of the last months, either November or December of 2015.
So pretty much exactly 2 years ago at this point of this recording.
Exactly. I took it with my friend Paul and Connie, who they were the ones who actually got me into it. They wanted to do the class. And we took it through Uber Adventures with someone I know who's been on your podcast before, Klaus Gerhardt.
He was in the second episode, and he is the head of Uber Adventures, who often teaches classes here at Stoney Point, where we are this morning.
Yes, we've come full circle. This is full circle for me.
Bring you back to your childhood of when you were a bad kid, drinking and breaking bottles.
No, I didn't break bottles. I was just roaming through the hills, man. That's all we did.
Roaming through the hills and illegally drinking alcohol, and then later learning to do canyoneering techniques here, and then now talking about it into a microphone in a super comfortable spot where we're in between fallen trees and on top of graffiti-covered boulders.
And actually, if you saw a picture of me right now, I'm actually very comfortable.
I'm going to take a quick picture so that people can. Let's hear about this rappelling class.
I actually didn't like rappelling the first time I started rappelling. I think the first 2 times I actually rappelled down 60 feet, I hated it. I was really nervous the first time I went over I was really nervous looking at the anchor. That's what scared me the most of anything. I didn't know anything about anchors. I didn't know anything about climbing. I didn't know what the materials were made out of.
I'm assuming it's probably webbing anchor, right?
It was a webbing anchor. Klaus set it up, so there was no issues, but my novice eyes were looking at this thing that was going to unknot and I was going to fall. So that was like my first worries.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, because the first time I ever did any sort of rappel, you like look at webbing, like that flat tubular webbing, yep, and you think, that doesn't look like it can support anything, although it can support a hell of a lot. You learn.
Yes.
And then there's always that moment where you have to get over the lip.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah, once you get people over the lip, everything's good. But that moment, I've watched people just stand there for tens of minutes and then either finally give in or give up.
So what happened to me was I started to go over, and instead of putting my butt back and down and sitting back, I started to walk down with my feet. And Klaus yelled at me.
So you were about to smack into the rock.
I was
right?
about to fall and smack into the rock, and that's exactly what he yelled to me. He said, "You are going to fall and hit the rock." And it scared the living crap out of me, actually. And I got really nervous, and I sat back down, and I got through it, and I went to the bottom. And at the bottom was my friend Daniel Elson, who was helping Klaus that day at class. And I told him I didn't like what I was doing. And he looked at me, and he was like, "You know what, man? The next time you go down," you met Daniel Elson?
Yeah. You were like, whatever he's about to tell me must be the truth, because he has a really cool mustache.
That was just gonna say. So I knew, I was like, okay, well, this guy, he looks like he's like a Swiss Alps guy or something. Like,
he's clearly spent 20 years growing that mustache. He must know what he's talking about.
He told me when next time you go down, stop halfway. Just stop, like lock off and look around. The next time I had to walk back up the boulder, and I didn't want to do it, and I got in and I started to go over, and I was much more comfortable going over the edge, and I stopped and I looked around at all the areas that I grew up in, and it was just, I was in such a different vantage point seeing the world than I'd ever seen the world before, and looking down at someone 50 feet below me or whatever it was, and it all like went ding. And I remember I looked at Daniel, and Daniel, these exact words, he said, "Addicted." And that was it from that moment on.
It's funny because rappelling is so counterintuitive. First, you don't trust the gear, like we were talking about. So you see all this gear, and it's the same thing with climbing. You really have to like fall on that gear or hang on that gear and learn like, oh, this stuff's solid, and then mess with it and learn to set it, and then you really start to trust it. But everything about rappelling is counterintuitive in the body motions, because you push your body away from the rock and stand away from the rock, and everything inside you in your mind is saying, get as close to this rock as possible, that way you can hold on to it, that way you won't fall. Oh, hold on to this, or that way you're closer with the rope. But that's exactly not what you want to do, because then you're more likely to hurt yourself and just ineptly do what you're trying to do.
Exactly. It's that sitting back into it thing that people really have trouble with in the beginning. I think I had to go into so many canyons and rappel so many times before I really got to where I feel like I am now. So it took a while to be smooth at it and all that stuff.
All right, so tell us that number. How many are on your list?
It's like 60 canyons. I could really tell you. With the book, I could really tell you. It's like 60 canyons, and I think like 45 or 50 of them are unique. So there's like 10 to 15 I've repeated.
I think you can refer to yourself as a canyoneer and not an aspiring canyoneer, as a person who's like, I have never done one, so I'm aspiring to do it, or I have done two. And now
okay, so what I mean is my eyes are so bright. Like I want to go to I haven't done Europe, man. Like Europe is where I feel like I'll graduate to that C-class canyoneer that I want to be.
So this is what I know about you, because we just met earlier this year.
Yes.
And since the time I met you, you were fairly fresh to it. And in that time, I feel like every other day I see like a picture of you somewhere else doing sometimes pretty big wet canyons. I mean, I know you've gone up to Pacific Northwest and done some of the sea stuff up there, and then you've been hitting some of the Sierra stuff, and for 2 years in, like, you've hit some pretty good stuff. So
I went full bore this year. I had a big plan this year. There was a lot of rain. I knew there was going to be big canyons going off with big waterfalls. I had slowly started meeting people in the community, which changed my life, meeting some of these people. So I knew I was going to be able to get into some of these canyons, and I did everything I could. Any meetup I found that was like a unique C-Class or a Sierra Canyon or whatever, I put myself into it, and I just went for it this year. I did a lot of San Gabriel stuff right after the rains. I did Eaton when it was running high. I did Great Falls of the Fox with Danielle and Brian Monroy when it was running in C-Class conditions. That was pretty gnarly. So I did a lot of stuff out here right after the rains in the San Gabriels and down south, and then we would scout over and over up in the Sierras. I mean, that's how I met you, was on basically a scouting mission. I mean, we wanted to canyon.
Shit, that's right. The very first time we met was to go stare at the base of a route, decide it was too dangerous because there was white water in the canyon, and then leave.
Jason was the voice of reason that day. I was, like he said when he met me, I was a greenhorn. I hadn't done a lot of C-Class canyons. I hadn't done a lot of big stuff, but I was ready for it. I just remember coming around that corner and seeing the river going through the creek. It seemed like a river, and I remember
it totally was. It was crazy. It was full-on whitewater. Yeah, where we should be hiking in like ankle-deep water was whitewater.
And so this is how I remember that situation. I was scared, very scared, very scared. And I was the second person up. I come up, and Bronick, who I had just met with you, is sitting up on this rock. He wasn't doing yoga, but it looked like he was sitting there just like meditating, ready to go into this freaking mess. And that made me scared. I've heard some stories about him. I know he's a very good canyoneer. I know he does big, tough stuff. So I was ready to learn. And then I think Jason and Freddie came up next. I think Freddie was more disappointed that we weren't going to be able to run the canyon. And Jason took one look at it and said, nope. And that made me happy. It made me very happy.
This should make you happy also, because Freddie and I were in the back, and as we were hiking up, Freddie said, oh yeah, I can already hear that we're not going to do this today.
Oh, you
just from the sound of the water.
I didn't know he said that.
Yeah. So he had already pretty much decided the likelihood of us going through was pretty low.
So I've been back to Lower Salmon since then 3 times. So I went up there 4 times this year. I've never heard it like that. It's you can hardly hear it when it's going more normal or low.
Those that aren't in this region, which is Southern California, and aren't canyoneers, they may not know that we've been in this pretty big drought for years now in this area. This previous winter was a huge rain year, so canyons that a decade ago would occasionally run like lower C-Class levels were for a while back at those levels that no one had seen in years. And so a lot of people who would think of some of these canyons as like super easy would maybe drop, like Eaton might drop into them on certain days and find out that it suddenly was very challenging and technical and potentially dangerous.
There was a group that went through Eaton this year right after the rains, and it was raging. It was Danielle and all them went through it, and I've seen videos of it. It was intense. I've never seen Eaton like that before. It was a lot of technical jumps and stuff they had to do. And let me tell you, there's 2 rappels in Eaton that you kind of got to go through the water. And that one before the last one pounds you. It really pounds you.
I went through maybe a week or 2 after they did, probably a week, and the water had lowered substantially but was still pretty strong. And some of those wraps, like particularly that one you're talking about, as soon as you get underneath it, it would just push you down the rope.
Yep.
Yeah. It was way stronger than I'd ever seen it.
All the water in the whole canyon funnels through an area of about, 9 inches wide or something, you know what I mean? And then that pushes you down. And this was the year I knew with all the rain that I was going to get my experience. I knew I had to be a good teammate and canyoneer, and I figured out the formula how to get into the canyons with people. There is a formula.
So what's the formula?
There's a lot of things you got to do, man, like to get invited out and to get invited back out, in my opinion. You got to really work hard and be a teammate. I really enjoy what I do, and I think people see that. And you want to be around people that are happy doing what they're doing, not like people that are doing it just because, or I got to move on now to this and blah, blah, blah. I don't like people that rush through everything and are bossy, and I don't know how to explain it. I figured out a way how to just be the best teammate I can be, and that's how I started getting to all these places.
The other secret is you can be a terrible teammate, but if you're a really bad singer, people like to have you around. That's my secret.
They'll keep you around for sure. You get dragged through those canyons, but you got to turn the music up.
But now you can always tell. You'll go through with someone relatively new, and you know pretty quickly, I'm never going to see this person again, or I'm going to start seeing this person everywhere. And you fall in the category because you're excited about it, you're easy to get along with, and you're always eager here to learn. Like, we should talk about a learning experience I got to witness of yours, if you want to tell us about the topic. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so after we scouted out Salmon, me, Freddie, Bronick, and Jason, we didn't run it. We actually came back. Bronick didn't come back, but Jason and Freddie and I and Amanda Kraft and Christian, we all came out, and we ran Lower Salmon. So we were in Lower Salmon, and it was in pretty decent flow, and it was a great day. I actually really like that canyon. It's pretty easy.
It's pretty fun. Yeah, it's not too challenging. It's really fun, and then it's got that rabbit hole, which is just intimidating enough if it's not at deadly levels.
Yeah. And it's fun. And then the last rappel is, in my opinion, a very beautiful rappel. It's a beautiful boulder to rappel off of, and it's one of my favorite rappels, actually. We had just got through some of the areas where you gotta kind of have like trees and stuff over your head, and then the canyon opened up and it was sunnier. And there's a pool that you can jump into, because I remember I had jumped into it before with my friend Jason. Tossed my bag in nonchalantly into this pool. It seemed
like there was almost no flow in the pool.
It didn't seem like the pool was flowing at all, actually. It seemed still. Tossed it in, and I took too long to jump in. I should have just jumped in right away and got my bag, but I threw it and I kind of looked around and dopily whatever. And when I jumped in afterwards, I went to look for my bag and I couldn't find my bag anywhere. And I got really nervous, and Freddie went ahead, and I told Jason, and we went back and we started looking in like every pool that it might have possibly have gone in. I was going underneath like little waterfalls and shoving my hands underneath to see if it got wedged in or something. And the problem is we had it's a shuttle canyon where you park in one spot and you hike up, and then you have another car at the exit. Well, my car is one of the shuttle cars, and my keys were in my bag. Right. Klaus, you didn't hear that. So that was my I don't care about my wallet or any of that stuff or whatever else was in it, but how are we going to get out of there without the car? And we're up in the mountains, like up a dirt road, so it's not like we were by anywhere where we could get help too quickly.
Or cell service or anything.
Yeah, or cell service. So basically, my bag somehow got in the flow, went down a few waterfalls, a few pools, and ended up getting wedged where he was talking about there's a spider hole rabbit hole, you call it?
Call it whatever you want.
It's a hole in the rock.
Yeah.
And I guess
water flows through it.
Freddie was over there, and it got wedged in that spot, and it didn't go all the way down through the canyon, which was great. I got my bag back, and I learned my lesson.
And I remember seeing a picture of you, like maybe a month or so later.
I was just going to say this, because you commented on my picture is what you did. So he saw a picture of me climbing up a boulder to do another jump, because honestly, I love jumping. If I could jump everything, I wouldn't even rappel. I like rappelling, but I'm like one of those guys where jump. I love it. So I was climbing up a boulder to jump, and Jason saw my bag nice and situated on a rock where it wasn't going anywhere.
I think it might have even been like propped amongst some branches or something. Like it was being held in place very securely.
Going anywhere.
Yeah, so I liked that, because I saw like, he learned his lesson that day, and he has since incorporated this lesson into his future activities.
My bag is always safe. My eyes are always on it, definitely.
So that's good, man. Everybody makes mistakes, but it's when you learn from them. I made a terrible mistake. I fell on a rappel one time, 50 feet, and got super lucky and didn't get hurt. And it's just because I was dicking around and not paying attention to what I was doing. And
your brake hand came off?
No. Basically, we were doing a night canyon. We hit like a 50-foot wrap. We're all messing around. I go down last. I notice a weird thing with the rope. Make an adjustment to it. Don't check my adjustment like I should. Don't check my body weight, and then just get on rappel, pop the anchor, and fell backwards. Got lucky. I was able to slide down a rock face, then I didn't hurt myself at all, but I could have potentially killed myself. And that is a ridiculously stupid mistake. And that wasn't like my first year or anything. That was after a while of doing it. And so it was one of those going on autopilot, getting complacent, stupid mistakes. I was
just going to say that word. That's what I've come to understand, and I'm learning, is in some of these more extreme style sports that we do, when you start to get good at it, and it almost starts to become more second nature.
And I would say even not even good, but just comfortable with it.
You start to get complacent. And I think I've just heard too many stories now of like some very, 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 very experienced people not messing up.
Yeah, and so if I could be forgiven for that dumbass mistake, nobody's going to judge you for making a simple pack error that anybody could have made.
There's been a few other issues in canyons. Nothing crazy, though. I've lost a lot of money in canyons.
What the hell are you doing?
I have left sunglasses in canyons.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like physically. I keep dropping $20 bills.
We're all gambling up there and everything, tossing bones. I'm a fool. I've taken expensive sunglasses like these into canyons.
That was your first mistake. Never buy expensive sunglasses.
I know. I don't know. I am addicted to this one style of sunglass. I don't know.
Hold on. Let me see them. I'm going to verify for the. Put them on. I'm going to verify whether you look cool or not.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, he looks so rad.
Oh, man, you know it, dude. You know it. I lost my friend's camera.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. It was on a rappel, though. $200, like, water camera. One of the cheapy Nikon ones, I think. And it was strapped to my shoulder, and we were rappelling in San Gabriel's it was higher water, LSA. And there was this rappel that had this, like, log on it. Or it used to have a log on it. I think someone took it out. I slipped. It was earlier in the year, and I was getting my legs back on the watery rappels. I slipped, and the camera flipped over my shoulder and got hooked onto the log. And as I started to rappel down, I stopped. And I didn't know why I was stopped. I didn't know what was holding me up. Right. So I was like, and I yank, and I yank, and I yank, and I popped my friend's camera off, and I got down. I just thought I had just unhooked myself. But when I got down, there was no camera on me, and it's a waterfall that is just pounding in there. And you could try, you're trying and trying to look for it. You're sticking your hand in there, and I couldn't find it. So I lost my friend's camera. I've lost sunglasses.
To your defense, in that day in Lower Salmon where you almost lost your pack, I then almost lost it again for you on the rabbit hole wrap because I was sitting it down on the rope to you, and I accidentally, in the water flow, clipped the carabiner only partly. It seemed like it was right, and then the water hit it and knocked it right off, thankfully directly into your hands below.
I remember being very confused, thinking if that's what he meant to do, I'll tell him a better way next time.
It was absolutely not what I meant to do.
Oh man, that's so funny. I actually forgot about that till just now.
Yeah. So
and I remember it exactly.
I'm a complete dumbass. You don't have to feel bad at all.
I've been in a canyon where like one of my friends left rope at the top of a rappel, and my other friend was still on the rope, and we had to belay him as he climbed back up to get our rope. We've done like those kind of things.
And you don't have to feel obligated to tell us every dumb thing you've ever done.
You know, you got to be careful, and I think the whole complacency thing comes into play. Is I've been very lucky in canyons. Not too many crazy things have happened. I do have one pretty crazy story, but I've been lucky, and I got to knock on wood, and I just got to make sure that I don't get complacent. I feel like I don't ever want to feel that I'm so comfortable that it doesn't bother me. I want to feel kind of nervous when I'm out there, and I actually like that feeling.
All right, you can't say I have one crazy story and then just change the subject.
It's not crazy more than it's probably just a lesson for everybody. I mean, it was crazy when it happened, and the whole day was crazy. So this year I did a lot of, as Jason said, canyoneering. I went to a lot of different places. Early in the year I did an Uberfest with Klaus's Uber Adventures to Arizona. It was the first time I'd ever canyoneered in Arizona, and we did a canyon called Lower Salmon, the Jug. It's a very beautiful, easy, fun canyon. You just float in water all day, and there's beautiful rock formations. It looks like the log ride at Disneyland or something. Like, it looks fake. Like, all the rocks look just fake. And there's just like huge saguaro cactuses that are like 30 feet high, like lining the ridge, and you're just in this bowl of amazing rocks and water.
And there are a bunch of like Brer Rabbit.
Yeah. Oh man, Brer Bear and Brer Wolf, they're all chasing each other and just like...
Sweet.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, honestly, if that would have happened, I probably would have died. That would have been great. I was just enjoying the day. We were floating through there. A friend of mine who was in the canyon with us had gotten ahead of everybody. He went down this like slide. So what we do in canyoneering is we either up climb, down climb, rappel, slide, or jump. Pretty much. There's not... Or crawl. I've crawled through quicksand. So my friend was sliding down what we would call a slide. He had gone down, and he'd come back up because you could climb back up, and he had told everybody that it was dangerous. Okay, so there was a danger down there. I was a little bit back. I didn't know. Another one of my friends was getting closer to getting towards him, and then he got back on the slide and went down again, and he ended up breaking his fibula. The one on the left side. So whatever.
He had just motioned to the lower portion of his leg.
Yep. I actually saw his face as it happened, and I knew something really bad had happened.
His face went from wee to, oh shit, this hurts,
to pointing to where the danger was, and all the signals and everything. And I knew something was wrong. And my friend was about to go down the slide right after him. I had to grab her and pull her away. I had to stop everybody, to let everybody know what happened. And we had to basically float because there was he had broke his leg. He wasn't going to be able to climb on rocks or anything. But we were lucky. The jug is like filled with water. So we floated him pretty much through the whole canyon. There were some times when we had to like support him down some down climbs and some little waterfalls, but there's like no rappels till the end. So we actually had to get him onto rappel in the end and get him down this one rappel where me and the rest of a bunch of us jumped off, which is the best part of the jug. Have you ever done?
No, I have never done the jug.
If you're ever in Arizona, you want to do a simple, easy one, just cool off. It's fun. So we got him down the last rappel, and we were all sitting around. The canyon opens up onto a beach, like right after their last pool area. I made sure he stayed in the water so that the swelling was going to stay down. I'd never been in a situation like this before. We were in the middle of nowhere. We're in the middle of nowhere. Just to get out to the jug, you have to drive on a 4x road, off-road. Even then, you're still in the middle of nowhere once you get back to where your campsite is and all that. So I'd never been in this situation. Didn't know what to do. I'd never made a splint. I'd never done anything like that. Everyone was really quiet and just kind of taking their wetsuits off and not really talking much. And I was freaking out in my head because I didn't know how we were going to do. I figured we were going to have to get search and rescue. I just jumped into action. I was like, you know what? We got to get a splint on him. And a friend of mine helped me. And I don't want to say any names of anybody, but everybody worked together. Me and my friend built a splint on him, and we cut off the wetsuit to make sure there was no bones protruding or blood or anything like that. So we cut off the lower portion of the leg of his wetsuit. It looked okay. We took like a down poofy jacket like what you're wearing right now, and we wrapped it around his leg. Then we took 4 sticks, 2 on each side, and we put it on his leg. And then we took webbing. I put a girth hitch on it, tightened it up really, really hard to where he was grimacing, and I wrapped it around it as many times as I could, and I got a knot to tie it off, and we ended up getting him out of there, man. And it was like a very impressive thing for all of us. Like, everybody helped. Everybody was pushing and pulling him up because you have to go up a hill to get out of this place before you get to the trail that's miles to walk out. It was a long day. It was an eye-opener for me, for sure, because I really like sliding and jumping, and I know it's the most dangerous thing that we do, and everybody tells me it over and over, but you've got to be safe with it.
Yeah, you can take certain precautions a lot of times. I mean, there can still be little things that happen that you can't be prepared for or can't be aware of, but yeah, you can take precautions to make it as safe as you can. And one of the nice things in a terrible moment like that is you kind of get to see what everybody's made of and who people really are. Yep. And it sounds like you were with a good group. Everything worked out and everybody kind of contributed in the way that they needed to contribute, which is always good. It's also kind of a friendship builder, those moments like that.
Oh yeah, and that's even more of a friendship builder. I mean, just canyoneering, like, go through one canyon with someone, and if they're even remotely a good person, you're gonna just be closer, in my opinion. You're putting your life on your line out there.
I always find that the friendships in these activities build so much more quickly.
Yeah. In the real world, I've never built a friendship so fast or as good of a friendship.
You have to trust each other in ways that you don't typically have to trust people. Shitty people get weeded out really quickly, it seems.
I agree. And you know what? I tell this to people now, and I hate to say it. I say I'm an aspiring canyoneer. I'm actually becoming more snobby, and I find it kind of a dick thing. But I do weed people out. I watch all of you who canyoneer with me. But I hope you guys are watching me too, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm not trying hard or I'm not trying to help or nothing like that. So, like, if you watch me, I guess you'd see what I'm looking for, I think. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't been told that, but that's what I think.
Well, it seems like you're getting invited by a lot of people on some good stuff, so you must be doing something right.
I hope so. And like I said, as long as I can contribute, I'm there.
So I want to backtrack a little bit because we've talked a bit about the last year or so. Tell us about your life before this. I know you said you took a rappelling class and that kind of launched everything from there. But let's talk about what your life was like before that and then what led you to go this direction. Like, if it was just a dalliance that turned into something bigger, or if it was like, oh, something's missing from my life, I need to add something to my life.
I can wrap this up in a way. I don't want to go too far back in my life, but
you could tell me about when you were a zygote. I would appreciate that.
My earliest memories of canyoneering, of this type of stuff, like I said, I grew up in Chatsworth by a bunch of huge boulders, so that's like my earliest love affair with being out in the world and on rocks and doing weird things like that. I didn't do anything like that in my 20s. I was just messing up in my 20s. I wasn't doing crap in my 20s. Let's just skip my 20s. I got to be around 30 years old, and I was realizing I wasn't doing anything. I was just working, and I was just piddling along and doing nothing. I mean, I had friends, and we would hang out and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I used to play disc golf all the time, like with my college friends and stuff. And we continued on for a while. And I remember one day I was disc golfing with my friend Paul, and he goes, "Have you ever thought about backpacking?" And I said, "Yes, I have. I've thought about it. Let's go backpacking." Like I didn't even need to think about it. I needed something to change. We looked into it. We bought gear. I bought a bitchin' backpack that I still own today and I used whenever I go backpacking. Got all the gear. It was all heavy in the beginning. I've now rebought all my backpacking gear and have much lighter gear. But we started backpacking, and that was like great. Like we backpacked through the Grand Canyon. We backpacked in Big Sur. We backpacked in the Sierra Nevadas. One day, Paul, and he went and backpacked without me.
Now we're not friends anymore. Fuck you, Paul.
So he went and backpacked without me with his now fiance Connie, and they went to Zion. First, I was just stoked that, like, you know, 3 times a year I had a friend that would go backpacking with me. That was, at that point, that was all I was doing. You know, and I was doing other stuff too, but not outdoorsy stuff. I wasn't getting out there and seeing these things that, like, I always wanted to do. They went to Zion and they were backpacking. They were in the back country. They were like up on the West Rim doing a full thing. And I was all jealous, and they were up at the top, and they saw a group of canyoneers, rope gear, helmets, all this stuff, and they were about to drop into a canyon. I don't know which canyon it was, but Paul went up to them, and he was just like, "What are you guys doing? What are you guys?"
I mean, he didn't say, "Are you guys climbing?"
No, I don't think he said that. Wow. Honestly, I'll re-ask him, but I honestly don't think he said that. Because he could tell they were ready to go, like, down something or something. He was doing. And they told him they're canyoneering, and Paul always researches everything. So he'd, like, research, like, the subway and some hikes that you could do, you know, and he knew that some of them required canyoneering skills. So now he's seeing these canyoneers, and he's seeing, well, it's like an attainable thing. It's not just like some mythical thing that you have to learn how to, like, how do you learn how to canyoneer, you know? It's actually, there are canyoneers. So this is before we knew about any of this stuff. I didn't know anything about any of this. They found out about canyoneering, and he came back, and I can't remember if we were disc golfing or backpacking or whatever we were doing, and he was just like, "You ever heard of canyoneering?" And I was just like, "No, not really." And he had brought up, like, the subway, and I was like, "Okay, well, I've seen pictures of the subway. Everybody's seen pictures, like the most famous, that or Antelope Canyon are like the two most photographed canyons around." So it was interesting, and he was like, "Well, I found this whole class. This guy teaches all these skills. Let's go try to rappel." And that's kind of like how it all started. I wasn't doing nothing before I started backpacking. And then I started backpacking, and I was starting to branch out, and just, it's taking a leap. It's trying something new, you know? I never tried anything new for the longest time in my life. I was so in my own BS. So it was refreshing.
So what do you think the difference is now between what your life looks like these last few years versus before?
Oh, I'm so much more into life. I'm so much more focused on finding new ways to be happy, where I didn't care before. Canyoneering is like the best thing ever. It really is. It's like, it's hiking, it's bonding, it's climbing, it's adventure, it's secrets. We go in places nobody sees, man. Like, that's like, I mean, you know, the Utah canyoneers, those guys all got their little secret canyons and shit, man. Like,
nobody's as secretive as Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona, Utah, you guys.
I like to call out Arizona anytime I can on this.
Yeah, I'll call them all out. California, we give up our secrets.
That's right. right.
Luca told everybody where to go.
That's right. Even in Arizona.
Suckers.
No, there's a lot of good stuff in Arizona. There's some good people there too.
Yes, I've met, and that's another thing. Everywhere I've gone, I've met great people. I know great people from Arizona. I know great people from Utah. I know great people from Las Vegas. I didn't know anybody from any of those places before I started canyoneering.
So you took that rappelling class. First you hated it.
Yes.
Shortly afterwards you realized you really liked it. So where did you go from there? You sign up for a Newbie Adventures full-on course? Is that what happened next?
After I locked off and I looked around and everything went ding, I think I ran up that rock and rappelled like 10 more times because I was getting it and it was fun. This was it. So that was when we got deeper and we realized, well, that scary anchor up at the top that I don't understand anything about, I have to understand that. We decided we needed to take canyoneering classes, and the beauty of Uber and Klaus's whole endeavor is that you can get into this world, and it's this whole other world. If you're into it the way I'm into it, it envelops you like whoosh. Like it took me whole, like a fish eating another fish. I don't even know, just like I'm so into it. I'm so into the adventure and finding these old school canyoneers and like meeting people like you who have been canyoneering since Klaus has been teaching and all this stuff. Like I love all of this stuff. I love going to new canyons and new places, and I had to learn. So we took L1, level 1, I guess you call it. I don't know.
I've never been sure, but that's probably what the L's for.
I think it's level 1 or L1, and that's where you learn a lot of basics, knots, anchors, loads, and you start to understand more of the physics of what you're doing and how to build anchors and why this knot works. And it's the beginner class. It's the first class you take. I took L1, and that was when I knew that I was getting into something really, really amazing. And there's still bumps in my journey along the way.
There always are. Just making sure they're bumps that you learn from and can move forward from.
Oh yeah, and I definitely, and you're part of one of my bumps.
Which bump is that? You talking about the backpack?
Well, it's not, you weren't that part of it. After I took L1, I got invited to a couple canyons real fast from someone who had been teaching us. And then me and my group of 3 other people.
Oh, wait, I know what story you're about to tell. Never mind. Yeah. I love this. Go for it.
So we started going, me and my group of 3 started going out into canyons on our own. We would go into the San Gabriels and we would learn about canyons that were fairly easy because the San Gabriels are kind of like beginner. In my opinion, they're beginner canyons, unless they're running with water, big water. So we were teaching ourselves, and we went through all the canyons everyone goes through, and we were doing it on our own, and we were like kind of hyping ourselves up, like, yeah, we can do this thing, this canyoneering thing. So then my friend tells me about this canyon he wants to run. Okay, so there's a site online called RopeWiki that catalogs all kinds of things. It catalogs canyons, it catalogs hikes, it catalogs caves. I don't even know. There's all kinds of stuff.
It's mostly canyoneering, but
it's mostly
other stuff will get added sometimes.
Exactly. You can find an area, a mountain range or a city or whatever, and you can find all the known or canyons that people have posted beta about. Beta is like information for a canyon. He found a canyon that seemed pretty easy in the San Gabriels. It wasn't far away, and it was called Nerf Herder. I said, okay, it didn't seem too hard. There was one situation where there was going to be a cairn or a dead man or something like that, which is kind of a more advanced anchor. That was it, but we knew how to do it. It wasn't a big deal. It was Nerf Herder, and the name just made me happy right away. It's a reference to Star Wars, and it made me laugh. I was like, all right, let's go do this canyon, this Nerf Herder Canyon. I come to find out later that it had only been run one time before.
That's right.
It had only been run one time before, earlier that year. And Jason was with, I believe it was Alden.
It was me, Alden, Scott Merrill, and Ben Pelletier. A lot of those people come up on this show frequently, but Alden particularly gets mentioned on this show frequently, and he is notorious for wanting to explore everything and anything. It was not uncommon for him to say, hey, I don't think anybody's done this before. We should go check it out and do a possible first descent of something, which oftentimes could involve lots of bushwhacking and terrible experiences. But poor little Kevin, he didn't know anything about this at the time.
No. And this was going to be the first, I would say, big adventure. Besides, I had gone to Moab earlier in that year, that was like my first real canyoneering experience adventure.
Was this one of the first times you were going out with your own friends instead of like with an Uber event or something like that?
It was not. It was one of the first times going out with my friends on a canyon that hadn't been run a bunch.
Okay, gotcha.
So we had done like, the Rubios, the LSAs.
Right.
We were able to handle all those. This was like one where we were going to, okay, let's try this one that, it's kind of newer. We have to maybe route find, we were kind of step it up a little. God, did that day turn out not that way. So we got to the approach and we were already just a little confused in the approach. We were able to find our way down through the bush. Like you said, it was a bushwhack. And when they went in winter, if I remember. It was like earlier in the year, right? Like
that sounds about right. Okay, I don't remember, but winter sounds right. Yeah.
Okay, so then it rained, and we went in summer after it had rained and all this growth had happened. So we ended up bushwhacking our way down into the canyon.
It was probably super hot.
It was hot.
Yeah, okay.
It was hot. It was like muggy. There was snakes all throughout the canyon. These little garter snakes or whatever, the gopher snakes. Every pool had just babies and it was really weird. There were some cool chutes. It's a weird canyon. There's like some cool chutes. It had snakes everywhere, which was making for a fun day. And the canyon's not hard. We got through it. There was it was an interesting anchor where it was like a rock that you have to tie webbing to, and you had to bury it or put it behind another rock. And that was like one of the our first experiences with a more advanced anchor like that. We had no issues. We got through it. We got to the part where the canyon opens up and you're supposed to route find your way up this hill to where your car is parked. You can actually your car is up there. So you were like looking at it just like, where do we go? And we could not find the trail that was on the KML or whatever.
Yeah.
So we were trying to follow the GPS route that you can get online. We were close. We knew we were right where this little trail was, but it was just overgrown. We couldn't see it.
Yeah, and we had an unfair advantage because Ben had recently bought
Cheaters.
Ben had recently bought one of those DJI quadcopters. And he was wanting to shoot footage along the way. Yeah, and at one point we were like, oh, it's hard to see where the trail is. And he's like, oh, I'll fly the copter and see what we can see.
Yeah, my friend was climbing up this like cliff, and I'm not climbing up there, so you better come back down. And so that turned our day around on us because now we had to figure out, this was our first major canyoneering problem. We couldn't find the route to our car, but we had our phones and GPS and everything, so we were able to we had a map, and the drainage goes out to Pasadena or whatever, the one way. So we knew we could just keep walking and we would find civilization, which was really annoying to me. So this was actually a huge turning point in my canyoneering. I found out that I loved canyoneering, did a bunch of canyons. I went to Moab right away and did some really amazing stuff, and I was starting to get hooked. And then I got into this predicament, and I remember thinking, if this is canyoneering, I don't like this. Some of my friends ran out of water. I always carry a ton of water. I carry a ton of water on purpose, because I like to get back to my car with water. It's a goal I have. I don't know why, but when this happens and now I got people with me that don't have water, now I got to give them my water. It was an annoying thing to me. That was one of the first times I was annoyed with good friends of mine in canyoneering. I don't think we had much food, and we were all pissed off. So it was a really crappy time. And what happened was we kept walking out the drainage the way we knew that the drainage went. Randomly, I saw a guy ride by on a bike in front of us, in front of the trail. I thought I was seeing things or something. I was like, oh man, there are people up there, let's keep going. So we kept walking, and we eventually met up with this guy, and he told us there was a campground up ahead. Keep going, 20 minutes. We walked for an hour and a half before we found this campground. And we kind of realized, it was 20 minutes while on his bike. Yeah. So we got to the campground. Life was better. He said he was going to meet us. He told us this place where he was going to meet us, and he was going to pick us up. And this guy was like our savior. He ended up picking us up. He ended up driving. We were so far away from our shuttle car that we had to get on the freeway and get back into the mountains. And it was glorious getting back to our car, getting our stuff. And I got home. I got the worst poison oak I ever got in my whole life. 2 days later. So my entire left arm, almost from my elbow to my hand, almost the entire thing was covered in, I get bad poison oak. Some people just get itchy. Some people get bumps. I get boils and blisters. My arm was it was dipped in acid is what it looked like. And for weeks, I had to wrap my arm in towels because they would weep. and you can't control the weeping. So I would just wrap it and I would sit there. And I remember my roommate was just like, dude, you were so miserable during that time. And that was when I debated whether I would ever canyoneer again.
What happened was you immediately went to Rope Wiki and you built a filter that filtered out anything that said Alden Anderson first.
Yeah, never again. That's exactly what happened now. And then my friend Connie told me she was talking to Alden later, and that's how we found out about the drone. So I knew about the drone before you had told me about that, but damn you cheaters.
And I mean, we only busted it out one time. It's
just
not like
for
we were
the
using
exit.
it all the time. I mean, he was busting it out to get video, but it was we only used it for that purpose one time. I don't think it was the exit. I think it was before we got to the canyon. I forget.
Oh, well, anywho, you still cheated. So I got the worst poison oak ever. It was like the most lost we'd been, the most angry we'd all been. I remember thinking, maybe this isn't for me. And then the very next canyon I ran was 7 teacups, and then my whole life changed again.
You always have to have like a shitty one somewhere just to kind of set you straight.
Whew. That was, it set me straight. I don't look for those kind of canyons anymore. I'm looking for like big waterfalls and crazy formations. And
Nerf Herder's not bad, but it's not a destination canyon.
If you want to do if you're going to do everything in the San Gabriel,
you got some time to kill and you've already hit everything else, then you might want to check out. Like there's some cool little spots on it, but the spots of it that are cool, you can go to other places where they have cool spots like that in greater abundance, and then other things also.
So time is precious, so you gotta pick and choose. You have to pick and choose which ones you do. I scolded my friends over that one. But then we did 7 teacups, and I found out that I just want to float around in water and jump, man.
The wet stuff is the most fun stuff, and it seems like you've gotten a taste for that as well. So tell us about that. Tell us about how you've kind of transitioned now to where you're chasing a lot of that C-class big water stuff.
I grew up with swimming pools, and I lived in Southern California in Los Angeles. I was always at the beach when I was in high school in summer, and like I said, I didn't do much in my 20s. I've always grew up swimming, so I'm a strong swimmer. Canyoneering in big water is kind of scary, and I think people get really scared. I don't get pushed around in big water like that, so for me it's a little easier. And I like it anyways, just because I like to swim. I like to jump off of big things. I like the feeling right before you jump, and I like the feeling halfway in the jump. I don't know what that is. There's something about that. Like I said, I went pretty hard this year. We ran jump trip. I think we were the first ones through. My friend Russ, we did it in like the highest flow that I think people have ever done it, and it was like 30 CFS. The first jump you do is 52 feet. I remember I watched 2 people do it, and I walked up, and it locked in my brain that I was going to do it, and I took like a second or two, and I just jumped. That jump changed me, man.
And it was long enough for you to think, oh shit, I haven't hit the water yet? This is tall.
My arms flapped maybe 5 times before I hit the water. Every 10 feet. There's just something about being in water. I like floating through big canyons and looking up at the walls and knowing that is coming to a super dangerous waterfall. And I don't know, there's something just so alluring about that to me. Like when I was in the Pacific Northwest, you would be up on these like boulders looking down into the pothole that you're about to go into, and that pothole is filled with water, and that water is rushing over a 150-foot waterfall, and I wanted to go first. Because I don't know, it's just this bug I have in me. I want to go down there. I want to feel what the water feels like, oh shit. Like, I like that. I don't know what it is. There's something about being pushed around, being underneath a waterfall. When you're rappelling in a waterfall and it's just smashing your helmet, you can hardly breathe, and you're creating that air pocket just by, ducking your head. There's just something about all that I love.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, there's this weird thing with water, whether it be like waterfalls or white water or whatever. Whenever I see like really powerful water, first, it's beautiful.
Yes.
Second, it's impressive because of just its sheer force and its ability to manipulate the environment around it. And then there's like almost like this sense of motion that comes from it that's invigorating and like inspiring in some sort of weird way, where it's like that water, for some reason, is making me want to do things because of what it is doing.
It's hypnotic. I like watching the water. I like watching the way certain thicknesses of water go over the edges of things. It's hard to explain, but that's actually how you determine whether you want to go through that or not. How much water is going over the edge, It's impressive. It's a world changer. This world was changed by water. Water did everything. It's something to be respected, too. Like, I have massive respect for what I do. Massive respect. I try to do everything as safely as possible, and I try to go into canyons with people more experienced than me. I don't think I'm the best, and I definitely don't go leading people through canyons. Just so you guys know that. I don't lead people through canyons. I like to go with people that are very experienced. I'll ask them questions about everything they're doing, why they're doing it. You can't just get good at C-class canyons. You gotta be with someone in a way that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, so what are some of the new challenges you're finding doing these?
Getting people to go into big C-class canyons when they're actually raging. No, my challenges right now are I am trying to get in better shape and lose weight because it affects you when you're swimming all day long in a canyon. I was really tired at the end of jump trip, but I did it and it was fine. It wasn't like an issue, but I don't want to feel tired. I don't want to be swimming with all this weight. So your body is a challenge. Keeping in good shape helps you through this whole endeavor, and I need to keep in better shape. That's a huge challenge for me. I had to relearn how to rappel this year in a way because I didn't canyoneer a lot from the end of last year to the beginning of this year. I didn't canyoneer a lot, and then there was a lot of rain. So I started doing a lot of waterfalls, and I was slipping a lot. At the beginning of the year, before I met you, before like the middle of the year, I was slipping a lot. And I think I just took my time this year with technique in water, where I put my feet when I'm stepping in waterfalls, how I push my pressure and how I sit back. And I feel like now, like I have like zero issues rappelling through water, slippery water, big water, heavy water, like something you just got to practice a lot. You're not just good at it. You're going to slip, you're going to slide. And sometimes that gets scary. And I think that's what pushes people away from water canyons. There's a lot of people out there that are really, really good canyoneers, but they don't like water canyons.
There's also always this thing with the falls when they're large enough where that fear of entrapment enters your mind sometimes. You're like, I'm underneath this part. I'm making my own air pocket. If a foot gets stuck or something, this could go really badly. You can become aware of that and then incite fear in yourself unnecessarily, or sometimes it's warranted.
Oh, it is warranted. If you're not scared doing what we're doing, you're crazy, in my opinion. You have to have some sort of fear. That's where the respect comes from. I'm scared when I do some of the stuff I do for sure, but it's also the fear and the controlling of the fear is also part of this whole thing that I like. I used to not be able to step out to the edge of cliffs. When I first started rappelling, that was one of the things I hated. I couldn't even look. And now I see videos of myself. I was just watching videos of myself last night from my GoPro, and I'm standing on the craziest cliffs just like, I've overcome a lot of fears. Canyoneering has taught me to really go deep in myself.
Other than when you're in canyons and things like that, now that you've kind of faced those things, do you find that bleeds into your life outside of outdoor activities?
Yes. It helps me become more organized in a way. I think differently about things. Canyoneering is a puzzle. I'm an independent contractor. I work in construction and architecture. I draw floor plans and I go to building sites, and it's kind of a puzzle in that way too. Getting through a canyon is like this ultimate puzzle of living in a way. Hard to explain. And it's more than that. I like that. And it's a life or death thing where my work isn't a life or death thing. And sometimes I get complacent in my work where I'm teaching myself not to be complacent in canyoneering while figuring out puzzles. And I think that's translating in my work where I'm not as complacent and I don't move through things as fast and I take my time more. I write things down more for some reason. I started taking a log of my canyons that I've done. Like I never used to write things down. I don't know. It's making me, I think it makes me a better person.
Sounds like it's making you more detail oriented in a certain way. Like you're starting to see the value in how the details and the pieces fit together into a larger whole.
And how you can do hard things and that puzzle becomes happiness.
Yeah, have you had those moments where you hit something and you're like, I'm not capable of this, and then you find out you are? Like it sounds like maybe your first rappel was a little bit like that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I hated it. I mean, maybe it was because Klaus yelled at me and I got scared, but I hated it. And yeah, no, it was like that. It was with the broken leg. I'd never made a splinter been in a situation like that. But when I did it and I got through it, like I don't want to sound cocky or anything, but I felt fucking good.
You feel competent. You become aware of like your capabilities.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Now I know, and you know what? I'm not gonna hesitate. I'm gonna take control. I've learned that I don't like being a leader, but I can be a leader. Because
I think a lot of times people think, oh, people get into this or this, it's because they're adrenaline junkie and they're chasing an adrenaline high. But a lot of what you've been saying is like, yeah, I like doing these things, it's fun. But that's not what's bringing you back to it. It's the deeper things that you're getting from it as a person, that personality traits you're building and the competency you're building that's kind of driving you to a certain degree more than the excitement.
The excitement and the adrenaline are bonuses for me. It's all about everything else. It's been about the relationships I've made. I met some people. I talk more to the people I've met through canyoneering on a day-to-day basis than I do to like my family members. We're into like what each other do and we care, and there's a lot of things I get out of it. It's really deep for me.
So we're here at the end of the year. When we're recording this, it's late December. What do you have planned for next year? You sound like you've now become like a planner guy. You're a guy who's like looks ahead and figures out what he wants to do with the rest of his life instead of just stumbling around. So what are you planning? What are you looking ahead to doing? What new challenges do you want to face?
Well, I like that you brought that up because that's also what I've been doing this year. Is I'm going to be more organized with planning, not just canyoneering trips and everything. Everything is going to be more organized for me this year. I really was a weekend warrior this year. I kind of dropped the ball on work a little bit every once in a while because, like I said, I'm an independent contractor. If I don't want to work on a Friday, I don't work on a Friday. That's not a good thing because I can just take off and go to Zion. I went to Zion 3 times this year. I went to Arizona. I went to the Pacific Northwest. I went to the Sierra Nevadas like 10 to 12 times. I went to San Bernardino's 4 times. I went to the San Gabriel's. I went nuts this year, and I can't go nuts next year. But next year is going to be more about quality and special for me. I already have a trip planned. So Jason gave me crap here. This is my thing. I invited him to go canyoning with me in 3 weeks. In 3 weeks. And he made it like this was like some future event that I'm setting up or something. But anyways, my point is I've got a trip that I'm really excited for coming up this September. I'm going to Switzerland.
Oh, nice.
So that's going to be awesome. I'm going to go do some European canyoneering, and that's kind of like, besides the Pacific Northwest, which I got done this year, something I've been really looking forward to. So that's my big thing next year because I have to save up for that, and that's going to be, a long trip. I've got something coming up in a few weeks that Jason's been invited to. It's just a quickie. And I've got something coming up in May that me and a friend of mine are planning. We're gonna go run the 2 biggies in Arizona, Illusions and Insomnia. So I'm looking forward to that. I like to branch out. I like water canyons, but I really do enjoy canyoneering in Zion, and I really had a fun time in Arizona. I can't wait to do more in Arizona. So yeah, I got a couple of Arizona, going to Europe. I got a couple coming up here in the winter. Maybe there's some snow.
Yeah, it sounds like you want to maybe get into some other activities as well, right? Like I'm supposed to teach you some climate stuff today after we get done doing this, right?
That's the goal. This year, when I was in the Pacific Northwest, when I'm on canyoneering trips, I don't always everyday canyon. One of the days, we went to a climbing gym. And I actually had a fun time. And I had been to climbing gyms before, but that day was just a day that I had more fun. It's just something I've been looking into. I have like a secret love affair with climbing without ever climbing. And it's not even that I want to do big, hard climbs or anything, but I want to learn how to climb. And I feel like not only is it good for your body, everybody who climbs, like, just go to a climbing gym. Anyways, everybody's in shape, and that's what I'm trying to get in shape this year. I feel like it's another tool for my toolbox for canyoneering. I've been in situations where the only way we were able to get the knot out of our rope that was 20 feet up was because a climber was able to climb up. So if I can help in any way, see, like I said, like I'm a team player. If I got one more tool, then that's great. And it just seems sometimes canyoneering is a big, hard, long day. Okay, you got to hike and do all this stuff. Sometimes I feel like I just want to sit around a rock like we're doing right now and just kind of like belay and watch people.
Although I'll warn you, if you get into climbing, you can get into even bigger days than some canyon days. I know you've started posting like a lot of photos of the things you're doing. So tell people where they can go to see like the photos you're doing, or if they want to keep up with you in any other way, if you post trip reports or anything like that.
That's actually another thing that I'm into right now is photography. Looking into buying a DSLR this year, and I really enjoy taking pictures in canyons. I like taking pictures of people in the moment in canyoneering. I'm not into the posing type pictures where I don't like those pictures when you go over the edge and you smile. Those are the worst pictures. I like the pictures where my friends are buried in waterfalls waterfalls and they don't even know that I'm standing there taking pictures of them. But anyways, I love canyon photography, and Instagram has some of the most amazing stuff you will ever see on it. I am friends with so many canyoneers. The stuff they do blows my mind, some of these guys, and there's some amazing canyoneer photographers out there. So, I mean, if you want to look at my stuff on Instagram, I'm Canyoneer X. I don't do this professionally. I like taking pictures, so I need to learn more about all that kind of stuff, but I'm on Instagram as Canyoneer X. I'm on Facebook as Kevin Heiden. I usually post lots of pictures to Facebooks of my trips and only special pictures to Instagram. Another thing is I don't really write many trip reports, which is it's one of my bad habits of canyoneering, because I do see a lot of canyons in a lot of rare conditions. I did a lot of not first ascents, but first ascents of the year this year. So I saw things in higher water. I was in jump when the bolts were gone and we had to use all of our rope to get around the bypass. And I need to get better at getting on Rope Wiki and writing trip reports and updating beta, and because I've seen things that need to be explained differently, I guess. And I've had people tell me that I need to do it, and I do.
What I like to do at the end of the show now is see if there's anything you want to leave people with, any final piece of advice or any final thought you want to share before we go and do some climbing.
I guess the best advice I have for an aspiring canyoneer like myself is you need to take chances. You need to get uncomfortable. You need to mess up. You need to fix what's wrong. You need to look into yourself. You need to just go out on a limb out in life, and sometimes you find the best thing. Take a chance. Go into a canyon that'll terrify you. Get through it. Bond with people. Make yourself an asset to that team. I guarantee you get invited back out.
I think that's super solid advice, man. So thanks for coming out. Hopefully it wasn't so bad. After all, I know you're a little worried about it.
I'm telling you, man, your podcast is something I've listened to a lot, and you interview a lot of amazing people, and if somebody can take something from what I said, hopefully that helps.
I think a lot of people will take a lot more than you might think. So let's stop doing this and go do some other stuff.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, man. Kevin is a good example of how a new person can become a worthwhile addition to a team, and a good reminder to experienced people to be open to welcoming new capable members to your team. Do yourself a favor this year. Take someone inexperienced out to do something that you have lots of experience doing. Kevin does have lots of new canyon experiences planned for this year and has begun getting into rock climbing. If you'd like to follow along with his adventures, now would be a great time to go to our website, gogetoutside.com/podcast. Look for this episode 64 with Kevin Heiden, and there you will find all the usual things, innumerable photographs of Kevin doing his thing in the outdoors, as well as numerous links to everything we talked about on this episode, including links for those who are interested in getting into canyoneering, a link to Kevin's Instagram account, which has many great pictures of him canyoneering. And in the show, we did discuss the night I made a terrible mistake and fell 50 feet. So I have also linked to that blog post I wrote the night after that happened, because I do think it is a valuable reminder for all of us to not become complacent and remember that we are doing things that can be potentially deadly. And while you're on the internet perusing photographs of Kevin Heiden, go ahead and drop us a line here at the show. Go at butcherbirdstudios.com, or if you prefer, call us up, 818-925-0106. And while you're at it, please go to your podcast purveyor of choice and do all the usual things: rate, review, subscribe to the show, and share it with someone. This episode of the Go Get Outside podcast was produced, recorded, and edited by me, your host, Jason Milligan. Additional help was provided by Griffin Davis. And as always, this show was brought to you by Butcherbird Studios. Next time on the show, Jen Hopper. She originally appeared on our Caving Roundtable episode. Well, now she is back to talk backpacking, climbing, caving, and being an outdoor educator. Come back March 1st, Jen Hopper. See you then.